Recording. So today, what we're going to introduce is something called a certification project. So we just want to congratulate everybody first for all the hard work that y'all have done just over the course. It really is impressive to pick up so many skills in such a short period of time. So we first want to congratulate everybody for that. And what we want to do is we want to offer everybody the opportunity to come away from this course with a certificate. So not just the full stack certificate, but other certificates as well that are in line with the skills that you have picked up. So in light of that, what we want to do is we want to offer something called a certification project. And I think everyone should see this as a golden opportunity. So this is a chance to show everything you've learned throughout the course and come away from the course with a certificate. And so there are a few certificates we're going to offer. So I'm just going to share my screen. So if everyone can see my screen, hopefully. And what we're looking at is a page. So I'm going to publish this pretty soon, but there are a lot more details about this project. So what we're going to offer is we're offering the potential to earn up to 4 certificates. So the first one is Introduction to Programming with JavaScript. The second is Web Development with HTML, CSS, JavaScript. The third is Front-End Development, and the fourth is Full Stack. So we can go a bit more into detail for each of these. So each of these have their own link, and there's a little bit mentioned there about what are the requirements to obtain this. So in the last, let's say, 6 weeks, you'll be working on these. And so these are cumulative. Like if you only need to pick one. So you're only going to be doing one. But for instance, let's say I do front-end development. So if I do this one, I will actually earn 1, 2, 3. I'll actually earn 3 certificates. If I do the fourth one, I'll earn all of them. But let's actually take a look at one of these. Let's just say I'm going to pick, let's actually pick this one. And let's take a look at what this looks like. Oh, my internet is being, okay, there we go. So each of these certifications has more details. There's a little PDF here. But as we can see, the first one is for web development with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So this is basically covering all course material up to lecture 56. And that's actually a requirement. So it says to receive the certificate, you must complete all course material up to lecture 56 and Friday, November 3rd assignment plus the mini games website project. Okay, so these are all things that had to have been completed. You also have to complete some soft skill quizzes. So for now, this is yet to be announced. So we will notify everyone which quizzes they need to complete. So these are pretty straightforward short quizzes, and these will be available for everyone fairly soon. And then you also need to register for and complete the steps in the Digital Careers platform, which again, we will give more information about that shortly. And also completing the certification project too, right? So this includes passing an oral exam. So completing the project, presenting your work and answering questions, and then also making real-time changes to your code to apply a small update feature in real time. So these are all things we can go over. This certification project too, that is more or less the bulk of what is needed to be done to obtain this certification. So this is a way for us to verify these skills and for you guys also to showcase these skills in the form of a project. So Whichever project you choose, we highly recommend selecting one that aligns with your current skill set so you will be comfortable working on it. Of course, you will be pushing yourself to learn more, but it's always good to make sure these two things are more or less somewhat matched. And here, so these are some links to each project. So within, let's say, we'll pick one of them, Certification Project 2. We have instructions, we have starter files, and we have a quotes.json. So I'll talk more about these two later as we go through one example of a set of instructions. So these instructions go through a few things. We have learning objectives, so what you'll be demonstrating, the requirements for the project. So each project has three options. So there are three potential things you can do. So for that project, there are three variants that you can pick. The requirements for each one, and as well as sort of we have the links to the starter files and then detailed instructions on how to start the project, how to plan the project, and then how to proceed with coding the project. So I think very shortly, I'll just go over one of these. But we highly encourage, like, whichever one you pick, very carefully reading through these instructions and also making sure to ask us any questions. So here are some learning. I just picked the second one. So the second one is kind of like in line with the mini games website. So it's going to be HTML, CSS, JavaScript, sort of a web page built with those three working together. So we have some learning objectives here. And these are the choices. So you can choose a quiz game, task list, and a random quote generator. So that quotes.json is for whoever picks choice 3. It's a little file, and there are some instructions given with regards to how to use that file. We have some information on how to get set up. So we strongly recommend following this because part of getting set up is getting the Git repository going. And that's very important because what we're going to do is we are going to track your commit history as part of the grading process. So actually, I think we mentioned here that committing frequently with descriptive comments is very important. So we mentioned that here as well. There's a bit here on planning a project. So before you start coding, we do recommend spending a good amount of time planning a project. You'll be making a little README file so for each of these. So feel free to just write in words what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, but also drawing diagrams is a useful way to plan out the project. And, we will set aside a time where people can sort of drop by and share with us your plan, and we can give you some feedback, and then we can check you off as having done that. So that's actually going to be a requirement as well. In a few days' time, sometime after you start the project, we'll get back to you exactly when, reaching out to us and doing that. It's actually really important. And we've said this before, but we'll say it again. We strongly recommend you do not use any ChatGPT in any of the planning stages of your project. Okay, and this is because past student experiences have demonstrated that ChatGPT is more likely to provide code that has very confusing logical flow and will result in significantly more work down the line. So yes, you can use some ChatGPT in your code, but the thing is, if you're using ChatGPT, you need to understand every line of that code, and the sorts of questions we're going to ask will require you to demonstrate that sort of understanding. So at the end of the day, it's probably better not to use any ChatGPT because you'll end up just doing more work if you use ChatGPT. The sort of understanding we're looking for that we test for in the oral exam at the end, ChatGPT usage will hamper that sort of understanding. So it's really important to have it entirely be your own code. And then we have some more details. So we have something here on grading. So I will mention this. And we are grading on a pass-fail basis. So there are a set of learning objectives you have to demonstrate, and we're grading on sort of those being demonstrated. And you know, if you do use ChatGPT, which we strongly discourage for planning, and then we also discourage it for even for parts of the code. But if you are using small amounts of it, cite it and be able to understand it fully and how it's being integrated into your project. We will consider it plagiarism otherwise. So if you can't explain the code, we'll consider it plagiarism. And there are no resubmissions if we detect plagiarism. So you will not receive the certificate if we have detected plagiarism. And so that's why it's really important for a project that you're working on for, let's say, 6 weeks, 6, 7 weeks. You should be able to explain every part of the code. And we also want to make sure your Git commit history fully tracks the life cycle. So that's important. That's why it's important to set up the repository correctly and be committing relatively frequently with good descriptive messages. So we can see that history being built up over time, and we can sort of track that development. And also these 2 points are important. So being able to provide a walkthrough of your code and why you did things the way you did, and also being able to make changes in real time to alter functionality when asked to based on our criteria. So we will ask, when you've built this project and we're looking at your code, we will ask you to, depending on the project, we will ask you to make certain changes, 1 or 2, like small, very small changes, but making these changes will test that understanding. How well do you understand the code you've written to be able to make these changes in real time? So that is pretty important. And this is just one of them. There's a total of 3 given so far. So for those of you curious about the full stack one, so those instructions are not yet finished, but the 4th project strictly builds a backend on top of the 3rd one. So for those of you who want to get the 4th certificate, or I guess all of them, feel free to get started with the certification project 3. And then later, when we finished covering that material, we will provide a set of slides detailing very clear instructions on how to go from sort of certification project 3 to adding a backend on top of that. So server, database, as well as some more concepts that we have yet to learn, such as login and security. So that's about it for the presentation. I guess I can ask if anyone has any questions, and we can take those up. Yes, Navita?
Yeah, just double checking. So if we say choose the number 4, option number 4, we get all the certificates, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And actually, because certification project 4 builds directly on top of 3, there's this sort of built-in assurance that even if something in the back end is broken, you will still get the first 3 certificates. So we've tried to make it.
And this is different with or is this like the certificate that because I know that when you join this course, they said that you will get a certificate. Is this like a separate thing, or is this like like if you don't do these projects, then we will not have certificate when the course is finished?
So this is the certificate. And we made it like this just so that, you know, a lot of people have joined the course and all of you have worked really hard. And, you know, we understand there are a lot of circumstances involved in not being able to finish. So we wanted to provide that opportunity that you can still come away from this course with a certificate in hand. Like, let's say you can still do the first or the second certification project, for instance. Because catching up now on everything is extremely difficult, but we still want people to have like a certificate in hand. So this is an opportunity for that. So these are the certificates that you can receive. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So, okay, I will just clarify one thing. So in the certificate here, we mentioned part of receiving any of these certificates is just so, again, just so we don't forget, completing the soft skill quizzes and also being registered for and completing all steps in the digital careers platform. So I just thought I'd mention that again, just so we don't forget about that. That is required. And actually, I think what we can do is we can, especially, I believe everyone's received an email for this one, for the digital careers platform. But as far as the soft skill, and if you haven't, we will know about that, and we'll reach out to you regarding this one. But as far as the soft skill quizzes go, that's something that we're working on, and that'll be ready pretty soon. Yeah. So I hope everybody's excited because, you know, you'll come away from this with a certificate, and yeah, should be pretty fun.
Sorry, one more question. On the option 4, it says the tools are React, Redux, Express, and NoSQL databases. Like, since we have done, like, currently we are working on with SQL, will that be like included anywhere on the certification?
That's a great question. Actually, so for this project, it's going to be NoSQL, but I think I'll actually let the other instructors take that up as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So for the requirements, we thought that if we use the NoSQL here, you would do the popular stack, which is MERN, Mongo, Express, React, and Angular, because Mongo is open source, and all these are open source. While okay, I think all of them are open source, but yeah, the popular stack is MERN, and even the popular stacks, they start with M. I don't know why, which is for Mongo. So we will use Mongo, which is a NoSQL database. It's gonna be easier for implementation. So you will not use Sequelize. It's like mock API, what we have used previously, and yeah, you will like deal with JavaScript objects in the cloud. And maybe the setup, we didn't explain the setup. That's maybe one issue, but we can do that in at the end of February. We can talk about this. But after you do the setup, then it's gonna be easier. The difference, of course, there's no relations. It's like, again, using mock API. But yeah, as for certification, yeah, I'll let maybe Hafsa talk about this.
Hi, sorry, I heard my name, but I missed what came before that. What is what can I help with?
Yeah, so for the certification, so here, so we like the fourth one is React, Redux, Express, NoSQL, but
Yes.
like they also learn NoSQL, SQL.
Mhm.
Yes. So how can we like show
Never thought to
in
ask,
the
but
fourth certificate
so
that there's also they learned
they're covering
we
next
can-
side. Then I'll be covering. Yeah.
That's
good. Thank you so much.
good question. I think that like we'll be certifying that you know your databases. You have learned both. You do have a project using like the the many projects that you've been working on does use the SQL version. So I think it's kind of looped in. The project for the certification project itself, you just need to worry about one. You don't need to make both types. Are you guys what are your thoughts as well? Like I guess this is for Alim, you meant to name.
Yeah, the mini projects do certify that they have worked on SQL databases as well. So I think we can include that in the certificate.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah. What do you guys think if you do you have any like thoughts on this? Okay.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. Definitely, for those of you who will complete the mini project, so those of you who are going to interested in doing the fourth certificate, any extra like of those skills that you've demonstrated that are not part of the fourth project, we can add that on to the certification because we can specify on the certificate which skills have been demonstrated. So that's not an issue. Yeah. And one of those is the SQL databases, which right. So great question. I see a question. What is the deadline for this? So the deadline for this, and we're gonna sort of speak to the instructors. We'll talk more about this and we'll confirm and let you know very shortly. Ideally by tomorrow, we'll let you know the actual deadline. But sometime mid-March. So we want to aim to try to have at least 4 weeks, if not 5 weeks, to complete this project, which we think is a good amount of time. And we see another question. So will there be more new topics for the rest of the course? Yes. So today we're covering deployments, which is quite short. It's just going to be on like how to deploy an existing project. And then you'll be deploying your mini project for those of you who are doing the certificate 4. So proceeding with the mini project from here on out is going to be important because that's required. And I think for anyone who is doing 3 or any of the previous ones, the mini project is not actually required. So we'll be talking about deployments. Now, deployments is something we've already seen, but when we talk about when we talk about deployments that's going to be taught this week, it's more about learning. There's certain pipelines and learning to use something called jobs on like GitHub Actions. So that is sort of an extension of deployment. So that's what we're going to be covering this week. And then let's see here. So that's deployment. And then there's just 1 or 2 more things left. So I'll have the other instructors confirm, but I believe it's just going to be testing and security. So, testing was covered, so it's going to be security. So we're going to introduce like this idea of creating a user with a login and password, and how to actually encrypt data before it's put into a database, be it SQL or NoSQL. So that's something that's yet to be covered. I think that might be everything as far as projects go. After that, there's going to be some time where we talk about industry. So industry related skills like algorithms and problem solving, leak code, stuff like that. But yeah, I'll let the other instructors sort of take that one up as well.
Yeah, so the idea is we're gonna finish with deployment this week, and sometime either next week or the week after, we'll probably go for the web security part. And the last month is essentially gonna be about more industry-based skills, like Lim mentioned, algorithms, lead code, just to prepare you guys for interview style questions and all that. Yes, Navita, I believe you have a question.
Yeah, just for the certification again, how much support can we get from the instructors for this one? Like is
So
it yeah, because usually like on the assignments like is it any different with like how much we can ask, or like how much we can ask guidance for, or like is it are we supposed to try to figure out to figure this out ourselves? Because yeah, is it any different with the assignments?
So for this one, we will be a little more strict, but so what kind of help you can ask would be something that's not really directly related to your assignment. Say if you have a setup issue, something that's really complicated, or maybe a GitHub issue, we can definitely help you out with that. And so ideally, when you guys submit the README file with the structure of your whole code or how you plan on going about the program, so when you guys submit that, we will check it out and we will let you know about our comments. And if there's any issue that we see or any potential issue that might come up, we will let you guys know about it, and you guys can restructure your code based on that. But while doing your project, if you do come across issues, in those cases, unless it's very complex, we won't be giving you a very detailed answer for that. So for that, you'd be kind of on your own. You could definitely backtrace to those lecture videos, lecture slides. Those will definitely help. And I believe, given the number of assignments everyone has done, it shouldn't be an issue, because the projects are actually pretty straightforward as well, very similar to what you guys have done previously for assignments during the lectures. But yeah, as far as help goes, we will be only helping with issues that are beyond complex, that probably was not anticipated beforehand. But project or code related problems have to be solved by you guys.
Yeah, Marwa, so you have a question?
Hi, sorry. So for those who aren't doing the mini project and or like anything after that, they can do up to the second certificate, or is it the third? Just hypothetically speaking.
Up to the third, because the third one is up to lecture 95. So, and a mini project was more recent than lecture 95. Yeah.
Okay, so after the mini project, there's going to be one more project after that, and that project will complete the full stack certification. If somebody was to do the mini project but not complete the 5th project or the last project, would it even be worth it?
So
Hypothetically?
there are these 4 certification projects. We've only listed 3 of them. These are like almost like standalone. So it's like,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Sorry, I think I might have missed. There might have been some communication on my part. So the next project that is after the mini project is just the certification project. There isn't like a following project after the mini project that is a standalone from the certification.
So it depends which certification project you pick. So if you pick the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, you actually don't need to worry about the mini project at all, because for each of these, there's some details about how much of the course you need to have completed to do that particular project. If you want to do the 4th certification project, then you need to be caught up fully in the course. So that includes the mini project, these like little mini assignments. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And yeah, I think we'll set aside a time pretty soon where we'll have like a little thing open where people can submit to us their plan for the project, how they want to proceed. And we can help you in terms of asking you clarification questions for your plan. We might code-related questions, we might be able to answer indirectly by referencing other assignments or other examples of code and that are similar and answering it that way. But again, we can't like directly answer your question by giving you the code that we are going to certify you on. So that's pretty important. Novita, I see you have a question.
So for these certification projects, there will be a deadline set for it, which is that's on its own. But is it that deadline also applies to the other requirements that needed? For example, like as you said, if we take up the full stack, like the 4th option, we have also to already caught up with all the previous assignments. In my case, because I joined in late, I kind of only caught up from the mini games project up all the way now, like to the current one, but I still need to I slowly did like the previous assignment from like the very beginning, but I haven't caught up on all of those. So like below mini games project, so like is the deadline to finish the assignments are the same with the deadline to submit the certification projects?
Okay, that is a very good question.
So I think I'll just jump in here real quick. Novita, you do have a pretty special case because, yeah, you joined the course, in the middle of it. I think what I would say is aim to finish the certification project first, because the deadline's going to be a couple weeks before the end of the course. And that's, again, we'll confirm the exact date tomorrow, but that would give you a couple more weeks between when you submit the certification project and the actual end date of the course to go back and finish any pending assignments. Another piece for your case is, so we do have, so in January, we did onboard some more people, and the people that we onboarded were specific people who had some prior exposure to programming, very similar to you, and to ensure that they complete all the work, but also at the same time, are able to finish within a short timeline. They are required to complete the assignments, but not all of the labs. And this is a special case for people who have prior programming experience. So to go down that track, we would need you to submit an email basically with information about your prior coding experience, because I know that you do have some, so that we can make sure that your prior experience encompasses the stuff that we covered before you had joined the course. And then we can put you on that fast track, which would allow you to do the assignments. But, especially near the beginning of the course, we had a lot of labs as well, and it is a lot of like extra work. So yeah, that's one thing for your case that we can do. If you can just email I guess some information about your prior experience, because you did mention you took some courses and things. There was one other thing I wanted to say. Oh, this is a more general comment to everyone on the call and watching the recording. If you find yourself in the middle of one of these certificates, like let's say you finished the group project 1, you're pretty much ready to do certification project 2, and let's say you're halfway done with the React material, or you are done React but you haven't done the Redux material yet, and you're wondering, should I go for project certification 2 or 3? Since we still do have over a month at this point, I would highly recommend you go for the higher certificate. So, going for the certification project 3 if you are somewhere in between, since we do have time. And yeah, kind of give it your best shot, because again, the more you put in, the better the certificate we can give you. And of course, with a higher level certificate, it opens up more doors for you. So do push yourself. Again, we are here to help and support you as you do that. But I don't want you to feel like, oh, I know, all the material for project 2, let me just go do project 2. Because, we do have time for you to work on completing the material and then do project 3. So just wanted to put that on the table as well.
Yes, Marwa, you have a question?
Yeah. So for people who wanted to complete the program and get like the full stack but couldn't for other reasons, will there ever be an opportunity where they can re-register or sign up for this program again, just to complete the portions that they couldn't due to other, sorry, there's an ambulance passing me, sorry. Yeah, so like for example, like if somebody was able to do everything up until like certification 3, would there be an opportunity for them to later come back and do the 4th certification in like the future, like maybe the 2nd cohort or like the 3rd or something that comes up again in September? Or is this it for us? Like if we've already registered for this coding and color program, are we never allowed to reapply for it again?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Thank you so much for bringing it up, Marwa. Actually, so interestingly enough, that was literally the thought process we, as the instructors had talked about and come to this multi-stage certification, pathways for. So the idea is that, so at the moment, we are working on like the opportunity for a 2nd cohort of coding in color. So keep your eyes on your emails. Once we do have confirmation about that, we'll let you know, and you can share it with friends and family who might be interested as well, but also for you. So for students who are enrolled right now, pretty much all applicants to the next cohort would be going through the same application process as everyone else. But the benefit to having done a certain amount of the course, like so far, is that we would know, okay, you were here from a previous cohort, even if it's not the next cohort, right? Like, let's say life happens and you end up joining like 3 cohorts down the line. We would know that, we had certified you for, like, let's say even as the example that you just provided, like we gave you certificate 3. So at that point, you wouldn't have to go back and redo those like parts of the course that were covered in part 3 or certificate 3. To be able to complete the full certification, you would just need to complete the part of the course that goes after that point. So it would be the back end part of the course in this case. So that's yeah, that's in the plans, in the works right now. But we're pending confirmation of like when that next cohort is going to start and what the dates are going to be and all of that stuff. So we'll keep you guys posted.
So sorry, thank you so much. That's amazing. That honestly is such a relief. But also, like, if we already have the source videos, like the source material from this cohort, to utilize and to watch and catch up on before the next one happens, would we still have to do that portion again, or would there be an opportunity to already have the assignment ready and have the presentation and all that in any tests or any assignments that needed to be done prepared before we reach that point to present it? Just a random question. I know it's not set in stone yet, hasn't been completed, just a hypothetical.
Yeah, I think I mean, I lean towards yes, but I think we would have to just make sure it makes sense logistically. But I don't see why that's something we can't build in. The only thing is that between the 2 cohorts, until the next cohort is launched, the instructors wouldn't be available to review the submissions and all of those to actually go through the certification process. But that's a good question. I'll take note of it. We'll discuss internally, see if it makes sense. But I think I don't see why not at the moment.
Also, I would like to mention that if you guys are ever confused or kind of indecisive in between which project to choose, you can definitely talk to us. We can help you out and give you a direction on how to approach which project you want to go for.
And also, for each one of these project slides, we have some slides on sort of how to proceed with a project. But it's especially important for those of you wanting to do 3 and 4, because those are a lot more complicated, given that, there were with React Redux, but also with the back end as well. So There are slides there that provide sort of stepwise way to slowly build that project out. And again, planning, especially for those projects, is going to be incredibly important. I remember earlier in the course, we talked about React UI trees. So that's actually linked here. There's a video for this certificate project 3 on how to do that. And actually if you do choose 3 or 4, sort of doing that planning is extremely important, especially drawing out that UI tree. We highly recommend doing that. And there's a link to a lecture where that's done as well. And again, the more planning that you do beforehand, the more time you spend thinking about your code, data structures, how things are going to be working together, what's the data flow of your application. The more time spent on that, the less time you'll actually need to spend coding, and the less time you'll need to spend debugging. So that is another thing we should mention. Marwa, so you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, last question. Oh, I forgot to put my hand down, but yes, I did have a question. This week we're going to be doing deployment, and then after this week, is there any new material that's going to be taught, or are we going to just focus on getting our projects and certification projects done?
So this week is deployment, and then next week we're going to be talking about security, and then we're moving on to industry. Now we will have some like open weeks in between, so we'll actually have an announcement with sort of what the next 6 to 8 weeks will look like. But we would recommend, like, you can still start on the projects in the meantime, especially project whether you do 3 or 4. 4 is basically going to be the same as 3, but there's another set of instructions for how to add the backend to project 4, which we will be providing pretty soon. So for those of you interested in project 4, you may as well start with project 3. It's going to be exactly the same. And then there's an additional set of instructions for how to transform it into a full stack project that will be coming up very soon. So we would actually recommend starting the planning now, even during when you're learning about deployment and security and so on. And I guess for those who are only doing, or I guess for those who are doing 1, 2, or 3, I guess we have covered all the materials, so just make sure you sort of cover those assignments. And also Hafsa also mentioned some of the special cases as well. So if you're, so you can definitely get started on the certification project sooner. You don't have to wait until like we're done the rest of the material.
Not just you can, but we highly recommend you do, because it is a large project, and a lot of the stuff you've already learned, and there's a lot of space between the labs and office hours and things like that to complete the parts that you've already done, so that once you've learned new material, you can focus on just incorporating that into the project.
I see a question in the chat about Ramadan timing. We have not really decided on that yet, but as soon as we do, we will let you guys know.
Also, the more questions, the better, because being a student and now an instructor, always, any question that I've noticed a lot of other people have had it as well. So asking more questions is always better. You're not only answering it for yourself, but for many others as well who may not speak up to ask the question. So yeah, more questions is better.
My one question is the certification a coding and color certification? Or a foundation for a path forward, or like what's the name, or would it be under the organization? Does that make sense?
So, yeah, that's a good question. So it'll be coding in color, but the supporting organizations are going to be Foundation for Path Forward, the Digital Supercluster, as well as the Employment and Social ESDC. I forgot what they stand for, but it's a ministry of the Government of Canada. Are going to appear on the certificate as well. Had to look it up. ESDC, Employment and Social Development Canada. It's a ministry of the Government of Canada, and so that will also be on there. Just wanted to make sure I provided the full name.
Yes, Marwa, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. The requirements to complete the certification is the oral exam, which has the making a real-time change. Can you kind of give an example of what a real-time change would be? Would it be, for example, if we were doing the number guessing game, would it be changing a line of code to show a different outcome? Or would it be like something that wouldn't require like like a complicated change? Would it be like a CSS thing, or would it be, is it fair game? Like whatever you guys want to ask. I'm just wondering, like, or would you guys try to like trick us and be like, can you change this, but knowing we can't? I don't know.
We wouldn't ideally trick you with the questions. So the point would be making a really small change in your code, proving one of the concepts maybe. So that I guess we would only be able to tell based on your code. That would be something that we would decide on spot. But the small changes would be just updating a feature, maybe adding a small functionality in front of us. It won't be more than, I don't know, 4 or 5 lines of code.
And also the change will be something that it'll be sort of encapsulated by the learning objectives for that project. So for instance, for the React project, these are some of the changes that so we could ask you, any change involving this stuff right here. But we won't trick you. You asked about the number guesser, so I guess I could give an example in the context of the number guesser. The number guesser was, I believe, from 1 to 10 or 1 to 20, something like that. So an example of a change could be, we could ask you to adjust that line of code to guess numbers from 1 to 15 or 2 to 15 or something like that. So those are some examples of changes we could ask for, let's say, number guesser. Yeah, Samina?
Yeah, hi. So far we've not done any assignments on Redux. So I wanted to ask, is there something in the assignment that will focus on Redux as well?
So I think we'll still have to talk between like the instructors about if we'll include Redux in the mini project, but so again, because you don't need to do the mini project to do certificate 3, let's say, here I have mentioned there's a slide here on how we're adding Redux. So we have a slide on how to add Redux, and we actually recommend in this project to first sort of to add Redux near the end, once almost everything else is done. And what we've done is in the starter code we've given to you, we've already set up Redux Toolkit to be used. We've set that up and we've put like a test reducer and a test action there. So the code's already set up, and we have some links here to like little readings that might help a lot with setting up Redux in your code. So this bit is here, yeah. So all the instructions will be given, especially for project 4. So adding the backend, we will not only give you slides, but we'll give you like a plan for like step-by-step how to implement part 4, like adding the backend in a way so that we can minimize as much sort of debugging as possible.
Okay, because Redux is something that is, like we know the concept, but whenever we're setting out to implement something that we've not done, so we tend to need more help. So that's why, over here, as Marwa was saying, that we may need help from the instructors, just to handhold us to get through this Redux part, because this is something I
That's
found
totally
very
fine.
challenging.
Yeah. And what we can do is in this, so we have a link to Full Stack Open here. We can actually implement this Redux toolkit. So we can implement that, and we can use that as an example for teaching Redux or for clarifying any Redux questions you have, because the Redux implementation will be quite similar. Yeah. So we'll definitely make sure we have those examples of similar code there, and we can answer your questions for Redux.
Also, there is a week at the end of February, so we can explain these topics that you find you didn't implement in an assignment, or like if you need any review for it. I think, yeah, MongoDB set up also Redux and any other topic like those that you want us to like revisit and explain one more time. Then yeah, that week would be yeah, the best to do so. I think it's after 2 weeks, so it's the 26th of February. Yeah.
And fortunately, I do think we have some prior videos in the recordings that do cover Redux Toolkit setup, as well as MongoDB. So I don't think the Redux Toolkit is linked here. But what I'll do is I'll add like a link to here. I'll add a link to some of these lectures that can be helpful. The MongoDB and NoSQL, so that setup is actually in, well, it's not in the certificate project 3 because of course there's no backend for that project. But when we release certificate project 4, we will include those links where they do exist for like we have lectures that cover setup, so we will have that in there as well. But what I'll do is I'll add some little bullet points here with links to lectures that could be helpful. So we have another question here. So if for some reason we are unable to complete the assignment, so for any, because a lot of people will probably have this question, so I'll read it out here. If for some reason we are unable to complete the assignments before the course concludes, will we still receive a certificate for the assignments already completed along with a corresponding percentage? So for those of you who have this question, we will get back to you. We've actually made sure to write that down. We'll get back to you on that question. We'll need to talk amongst ourselves just to confirm what we'll do for that one. We have another question. Is our presentation certification recorded live or private in breakout rooms? And is there a time limit? So that as well, we will, I think we're going to write down that question and we'll make sure to get back to those of you who have that question. So yeah, today is going to be a pretty, I guess, relaxed day. We'll just be here. We'll be here during the lectures and labs just to take more questions. Yeah. I guess if people want, we may as well go over like what planning might look like for the projects 1, 2, and 3. Just so we have that recorded as well. So I guess, oops. Okay, perfect. So, and actually, I think we will, the instructors, will split this up. So, each of us, maybe, feel free to also, annotate, let the other instructors also annotate and add in feedback and comments. So, everybody, we all have different ways of how we might proceed to plan a project. So we'll just talk briefly about it. So let's say, project 1 is going to be purely JavaScript. So it might seem kind of odd. It's because it's like, okay, there's no wireframes or anything like that, right? But there is going to be a lot of code. So, how I might plan this is I would look at, let me close some of these. Just close all of those. And I'm going to look at certificate project 1. So I see that I have to demonstrate these learning objectives. Okay, perfect. Data types and variables, conditional logic, functions, loops, objects. So I'm not actually going to go through planning these because I think that's your exercise. You guys will have to, for any of these projects, you'll have to pick which of these you want to do and you'll have to plan for that. But I'll talk about planning more generally. So you want a clear picture in your mind of what's going to happen. And because we're building, this is going to be a text-based application. So we are sort of like reading user input. And then we do something here, and then sort of we get this output. Usually it's going to be console logs because that is how, in this sort of example, what the user does, its impact on the application is communicated to us through console logs. when we have a sort of terminal-based application like this. So, you know, one thing that's very important, especially for the JavaScript project, you need to think about, what are my project requirements? What do I need to do? And then what data structures do I have available? You know, in terms of, by data structures, I mean complex data structures. So we've talked about objects and arrays. And so the most difficult thing, and again, you'll have time to do this, is translating from English, like these requirements, into code. So if someone tells you, you know, let's say there's some requirement like a store has a bunch of merchandise, right? And you need to think about, okay, how do I actually translate that into code? So that's what we've been teaching you, right? So that's actually the key. You know, you might, any merchandise product, I know my spelling is pretty bad, could be like an object, and the store itself can represent all its merchandise with an array of objects, right? So that is an example of the initial planning, is thinking about that. Another thing you could do, especially when a project takes a lot of user input and you want to give feedback, or you want to have like different ways to proceed through the application, one thing you can think about is having a tree. So the user starts here, and then maybe they're given a bunch of prompts, and like depending on what they do, a bunch of different things happen. So this sort of setup, like a tree like this, can be really helpful. And if you make a tree like this, you can then identify, for instance, maybe all this functionality here is repeated in different places in this tree. So there's a special word we can use to represent compartmentalizing code that can be repeated in many places. So it starts with F and it ends with N. Well, I'll just say here function, right? So these are ways you can think about that, right? So I think actually another thing would be, a really good thing would actually be to write these out and see during the planning stage, am I actually using each of these? Because you do need to demonstrate usage of each of these, and we have made the project in a way so that you will have to use each of them to implement it in a straightforward way. So yeah. I can stop sharing, and I can let some of the other instructors also share, you know, how they might go about planning the projects. Like this is for project 1 and potentially 2 as well. For project 3 and 4, for 3, we actually have a video that sort of is linked and talks about it. And for 4, we will sort of bring those, we will update the slides and introduce that as well. Yeah.
In terms of planning, I say what Aleem showed, it's very much like that. Try to keep it as detailed as you can based on your plans. The more detailed it is, it's going to be easier for us to understand the way you want to go about your code. And if we see any potential issue, we will definitely be able to point you to the right direction. And also, it's really important to have those trees, the diagrams. Those will help us kind of direct you towards the right flow of components. If we see that, say for React, if we see these components might create issues later on, we will ask you to change those a little and structure it a little more different based on how you want to go about your code. So yeah, the more detailed it is, the easier it's for us to explain and help you guys.
And also for GitHub, as you know, like solving issues with GitHub with GitHub is difficult rather than starting like correctly, let's say. So yeah, like deciding how you will do the version control, how you like first initialize the repository, and then what's the workflow that you will take in. So yeah, that is important, as you know. So is it like main branch and then there is another branch, and how the cycle is going to be, how many pushes are you going to like do, and then once that push is done, what's the next step? Yeah, so if you have this beforehand, yeah, that makes things easier because you will avoid errors. So also deciding that is important, and you can even decide like try a cycle of merging your code before starting. So you just do like have an empty repository, or add maybe npx create React app, or just any empty template or a file, and then try the cycle one, a full cycle. Just do it once and make sure that everything looks good, and then after that start deployment. This is also, as you know, because GitHub fixing GitHub issues are tough. So yeah, this is something to consider.
Yeah, I'd also like to add to that, make sure that the directories are very neat. It's not just clustered all together. They are detailed. You could, but by detail, I mean having separate folders for necessary items. For example, as you saw in the mini projects, we had separate folders for client server. For the client part, we had separate folders for components. And later on in the server part, we had separate folder for tests. So make sure it's all separated properly. That way, when you're working, it doesn't get confusing for you. And also, while you're working on VS Code, make sure your the file directory tree, that's very neat. Make sure you're in the project that you are doing. Don't have multiple projects available over there, because that creates problems of maybe creating files or folders in different project directories, which you don't want.
Yeah, Tasneem actually mentioned an extremely important point, because having a very clean and sorted workspace that you're working in is kind of like working, being able to do work in a very clean room. It's kind of similar. Now for this project, we have actually in the starter code, and I can show you one example. We have provided like a sort of setup just to make it easier. So each of those zip files, those starter files that we have, let's say if you extract the second one, it will look like this. So we've provided these folders, and we've also given some things on like what your root repository should look like when you start the project. So that's really important. It's really important too, when you're setting up that GitHub, if you're not sure things are set up correctly, just confirm with us that everything is looking correct before you start. So that is pretty important.
So yeah, throughout the whole day, all three of us instructors are going to be available over here. So if you have any questions regarding these, just let us know. We're happy to help. And if you need directions, we can help you out with that as well. So just let us know.
And also, fairly soon, we will be actually releasing, ideally later today, we'll release a little like mini assignment related to the certification project, which we'll be planning. And so we will provide some details on there, on more details for planning. And actually, it will be a requirement. So at some time, after starting the project, and once you sort of feel your plan is sort of ready to go, do check in with us. Like that will be basically the assignment. It's just to check in with us and talk to us for a little bit about your plan, and maybe we can give some feedback. So it's just to make sure that before you start coding, you're sort of in the right direction. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't get it. So you're going to release what? Right, today?
So it won't be like, it's just going to be for the certification project. It's going to be like a little mini planning thing. So it'll be
Okay.
a more formal way of you guys planning out how you're going to sort of develop this project and just talk to us about it. So that's what we'll be releasing, is just more details on that. So, and depending on the project you pick, it will be a different plan. So let's say if you pick project 3, that plan would be actually writing out, let's say, a component tree of what you want your project to look like at the end, and thinking about functions and props that are being passed down and so on. So we'll give more details on that. And again, the reason we're doing this is just so we have found planning in this way makes things easier in the long run, and we want to avoid people having to like drastically change their code in response to new things being added. So hopefully it'll be a bit of work in the start, just planning, but in the long run, it'll save a lot of time.
Yeah, also, this is our way of helping you out as much as we can, because when you actually start the code, we won't be able to help you a lot with code related stuff. So having it planned out will help us give you suggestions and directions even before you start coding your project.
Hello. Can anyone help me in one of breakout room, if you please?
For sure, yeah. Let's head to room. Do we have rooms open? Okay, let me make a few. Actually, I think we will pause the recording.